The 8th lesson. The decision hung over Castle Stormmore like the gray clouds that had gathered since dawn. 3 days had passed since Alluria revealed the 8th lesson, and Edrick had spent them in a state of suspended commitment, practicing the Kor'thenis boundary, maintaining his firefly sanctuary, but avoiding the question that grew heavier with each passing hour. How does one negotiate with darkness? Rose had barely left his side, sleeping in the chair by his door when exhaustion forced her eyes closed, waking at the slightest sound. Shamaz moved between the archives and Edrick's chambers, carrying scrolls that documented the 43-year survival of the only vessel known to have practiced the 8th lesson. Alluria watched everything with her scholar's eyes, noting the strain in Edrick's movements, the way his responses grew slower, the green light in his chest pulsing more erratically. The Kor'thenis was failing, not breaking, failing. The difference mattered. It's like holding your breath, Edrick said on the morning of the 4th day. He sat by the eastern window, watching the 200 cultists who had shifted their vigil to the courtyard below. They knelt in perfect silence now, heads bowed, hands folded, waiting. You can do it for a while. Even train yourself to do it longer. But eventually you have to breathe, Shamaz finished quietly. The old scholar looked more worn than Edrick had ever seen him, dark circles beneath his eyes, his usually steady hands trembling slightly as he set down another ancient text. The vessel who survived 43 years, his name was Therion. The texts say he learned to breathe with the darkness instead of holding his breath against it. That sounds like surrender, Rose said from her position by the door. Her hand rested on her sword hilt, as always. Different words for the same thing. Perhaps. Shamaz met her gaze without flinching. Or perhaps it's the difference between drowning and learning to swim. The water remains dangerous either way, but one keeps you alive. Inside Edrick's chest, the devourer stirred. It had been remarkably quiet since the revelation of the 8th lesson. Not silent, never silent, but subdued. Contemplative. As if it too was considering possibilities it hadn't entertained in 3,000 years. What do you want? Edrick asked it directly, speaking aloud so his companions could hear both sides of the conversation. They'd learned this helped, made the internal dialogue external, gave them all the same information. If we're going to negotiate, I need to know what you actually want. The response came immediately, but without the usual mockery or malice. Just honesty. A rare and unsettling thing, to exist, to be acknowledged, to not be denied and fought and suppressed every moment of every day for centuries unending. The words settled into the chamber like stones dropping into still water. You want me to stop fighting you, Edrick said. I want you to stop pretending I'm not part of you. We merged at Old Ravenhold Vessel. I am not separate from you anymore. I am not a prisoner in your chest. I am woven into every thought, every breath, every heartbeat. Fighting me is fighting yourself. And if I accept that, if I acknowledge you, what then? Then we establish boundaries, not walls, boundaries. Places where you end and I begin. Things that remain yours alone, things that remain mine alone, things we share. Rose made a sound of disgust. It's manipulating you. Can't you hear it? This is just another tactic. But Alluria stepped forward, her dark eyes fixed on Edrick's face. Is it lying? Edrick closed his eyes, feeling inward, testing the truth of the devourer's words against the Kor'thenis boundary he'd built. The threads of his identity, his name, his purpose, his memories, vibrated like strings on an instrument, and beneath them, through them, around them. No, he said quietly. It's not lying. The green light in his chest pulsed once, steady and strong. Then teach me, Edrick said, opening his eyes and looking at Shamaz. Teach me the 8th lesson. Show me how Therion learned to breathe. The chamber Shamaz led them to was deeper in the castle than any Edrick had been before. They descended 3 flights of narrow stairs, passed through corridors where the stone was older, darker, carved with symbols from the First Age. The Thrensacar, where Edrick had learned the Kor'thenis, had been old. This place was ancient. The Urith called it the Merkethis, Shamaz said, his voice echoing off stone walls. The speaking circle, where vessels learned to communicate with their burdens. The chamber was circular, perhaps 30 feet across. The floor was polished black stone. Not marble, something else. Something that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. 7 pillars rose around the perimeter, each carved from a different stone: granite, obsidian, quartz, jade, amber, silver, gold. Between them, the walls were covered in what looked like waves, flowing, organic patterns that hurt to look at directly. The walls show the boundaries between consciousness, Alluria explained, running her fingers along one of the carved waves, where one awareness ends and another begins, or where they overlap. The patterns change depending on who's looking at them. In the center of the chamber stood 2 chairs facing each other. Simple wooden chairs, worn smooth by age and use. "Sit," Shamaz instructed, gesturing to one. Edrick sat. The chair was surprisingly comfortable, fitted to his body as if carved specifically for him. Probably it adjusted to whoever sat in it. More Urith craftsmanship he didn't understand. "Now," Shamaz said, standing beside the granite pillar. The 8th lesson is simple in concept, but difficult in practice. You must invite the entity to sit across from you, not metaphorically. Actually visualize it, give it form, and speak to it as if it were another person in this room. "That sounds dangerous," Rose said sharply. She'd positioned herself by the chamber's entrance, one hand on her sword. "It is," Shamaz agreed. "If the vessel loses themselves in the visualization, they may not come back. But if they succeed, they create a space where communication can happen without constant warfare." Edrick looked at the empty chair across from him. "And Therion did this? Every day for 43 years, sometimes multiple times a day. The texts say it became as natural as breathing. Until his companion died," Alluria added quietly. "Then he chose not to breathe anymore." The words hung in the air. Edrick glanced at Rose, at Shamaz, at Alluria. His companions. His friends. The people who kept him human. "I'm not going anywhere," Rose said fiercely, reading his thoughts. "You're stuck with me, brother, for however long this takes." Edrick nodded, swallowed, and closed his eyes. "Devourer," he said, "come sit with me." The visualization came easier than he expected. Perhaps because they were already merged. Perhaps because the Devourer wanted this. The darkness in his chest flowed outward, taking shape in the chair across from him. Not the monstrous form from his nightmares, not the writhing shadow from old Ravenhold. Something else. Something that looked almost human. It wore Edrick's face, but older. Ancient. Eyes that held the weight of 3,000 years. Dressed in robes from the First Age, marked with symbols that hurt to look at. It sat with perfect stillness, hands folded in its lap, and watched him with something that might have been curiosity. "Hello, vessel," it said. Its voice was Edrick's voice, but layered with harmonics that resonated in his bones. "Hello," Edrick managed. They sat in silence for a long moment. Edrick could feel his companions watching from the edges of the chamber, but they seemed distant now, separated by more than just physical space. "You wanted to negotiate," the Devourer said finally. "Here we are. Speak." Edrick gathered his thoughts, drawing on the Kor'thenis threads to maintain his sense of self. "I need to know what's negotiable and what's not. What are your boundaries?" The Devourer tilted its head, considering. "I will not be denied. I will not be suppressed or treated as if I don't exist. I will not be fought every moment of every day as if I'm a disease to be cured." "And what about my boundaries? Tell me." Edrick took a breath. "I will not let you hurt my people. I will not let you consume this kingdom or any other. I will not become your puppet or your weapon. I will not lose myself to you." Acceptable. The word came so quickly it startled him. "That's acceptable? I never wanted to consume your kingdom, vessel. I wanted to exist. I wanted to be free. You offered me something different at old Ravenhold. Not freedom, but acknowledged existence. A prison I could see from, speak from, be present in." The Devourer leaned forward slightly. "I would rather exist in acknowledged bondage than be denied and suppressed for another 3,000 years." Edrick studied the ancient face across from him. "You're afraid. I am patient. There is a difference." No. Edrick felt it now, through the merger, through the threads connecting them. "You're afraid that if I keep fighting you the way I have been, I'll break. And if I break, you go back into the darkness, into denial, into the nothing." The Devourer's eyes flickered, the first sign of emotion Edrick had seen from it in this form. "The nothing is unpleasant. So we both want the same thing, for me to not break, yes. Then here are my terms." Edrick sat forward, matching the Devourer's posture. You get acknowledged existence. I will not pretend you're not part of me. I will not suppress or deny you, but you remain contained. You don't act through me without my consent. You don't hurt my people. You don't manipulate my thoughts or emotions. And you help me maintain the boundary, the Kor'thenis, because if I break, we both lose. Silence stretched between them. The Devourer's ancient eyes studied him, weighing, calculating. And in exchange, it asked finally, in exchange, you exist. You're part of the conversation. When I make decisions, I acknowledge your presence. When I feel your influence, I don't automatically fight it. I examine it, consider it, and then choose. You get to be heard, but not obeyed. Another long silence. Then, slowly, the Devourer extended one hand across the space between them. Agreed, it said. We establish coexistence. You remain sovereign. I remain present. We share this existence without constant warfare. Edrick stared at the offered hand. Behind him, he heard Rose's sharp intake of breath, felt her tension like a physical thing. If you're manipulating me, he said quietly, if this is just another tactic to break my will, I need to know now. I am always manipulating you, Vessel. That is my nature. But I am not lying. I would rather coexist with you than return to the nothing, and you would rather coexist with me than fight for centuries until you break. This is truth. Edrick reached out and clasped the offered hand. The moment their hands touched, the chamber exploded with light. Not green this time, but white gold, pure and searing. The wave patterns on the walls blazed into sudden clarity, showing the boundaries between their consciousnesses, the places where they overlapped, the spaces that remained distinct. The Kor'thenis threads sang like struck bells, vibrating with new resonance. And in his chest, the green light pulsed once, twice, then settled into a rhythm that matched his heartbeat exactly. Not fighting it. Not separate from it. Part of it. Edrick opened his eyes, his real eyes, not the visualization, and found himself still sitting in the chair, his hand extended toward empty air. But something had changed. The constant pressure in his skull, the endless whispers, the feeling of being watched from inside his own head. Gone. Not absent. Transformed. Present but not intrusive. Acknowledged but not dominant. It worked, he breathed. Shamaz stepped forward, his weathered face showing something like awe. The light in your chest. It's different. Edrick looked down. The green light still pulsed there, visible through his skin, but its quality had changed. Less aggressive, more settled. Like a flame that had stopped fighting the wind and learned to burn steady regardless. How do you feel? Alluria asked, her scholar's curiosity evident despite her caution. Tired, Edrick admitted. But clearer, like I've been shouting over noise for days and it finally stopped. Rose hadn't moved from her position by the door. Her face was unreadable, but her hand remained on her sword. Is it gone? No. Edrick met her eyes. It's still here, still part of me, but we're not fighting anymore. Not the same way. Then what are you doing? Coexisting. The word fell into the chamber like a stone into deep water. Rose's expression hardened. And if it breaks the agreement? If it starts manipulating you again, hurting people, taking control? Then I'll know immediately, Edrick said. That's part of the agreement. No deception about its influence. If it acts, I'll know. And if it breaks our terms, then you return me to the nothing. The Devourer finished in his mind, its voice clear but not intrusive. And I will fight to prevent that. Our interests are aligned now, Vessel. Your survival is my survival. It says our interests are aligned now, Edrick translated. It doesn't want to go back to being suppressed any more than I want to break. Rose studied him for a long moment, her warrior's instincts clearly warring with her trust in him. Finally, she spoke. I'll be watching. Every day, every hour. And if I see you changing, if I see it taking more than you agreed to give, then you do what we agreed, Edrick said quietly. What you promised. I'm counting on that, Rose. I need to know you're there, ready to end this if it goes wrong. She nodded once, sharp and final. I will be. Shamaz cleared his throat. We should return to your chambers. You need rest, and we need to document this. The 8th lesson has been practiced, but never recorded in such detail. Future vessels may. There won't be future vessels, Edrick interrupted. He stood, feeling steadier than he had in days. This ends with me. One way or another, the cycle breaks here. Ambitious, the Devourer murmured. But not impossible. We shall see, vessel. They climbed back through the ancient corridors, back toward the inhabited parts of Castle Stormmore. As they emerged into the more familiar halls, a guard met them with urgent news. Your Majesty, the guard said, breathless. The cultists, they've left. Edrick stopped. What? All of them. All 200. They stood at dawn, turned as one and walked away. No words, no ceremony. They just left. Edrick exchanged glances with his companions, then moved quickly to the nearest window overlooking the courtyard. The guard was right. The space where 200 cultists had maintained their vigil for days now stood empty. Not even footprints remained in the dust. Where did they go? Rose demanded. East, Your Majesty, the guard replied, toward the Forsaken Lake. The Forsaken Lake, where the original seals had been placed 3,000 years ago, where the Devourer had been imprisoned before Edrick claimed its fragments. They felt it, the Devourer said in Edrick's mind. The change. They're going to the old prison to see if it's empty, to confirm their god truly walks in flesh. And what will they do when they confirm it? Edrick asked aloud. That depends on what they find there, and what they believe it means. Edrick turned from the window, his mind already racing through implications. The 8th lesson had worked. He could feel the difference, the new balance between himself and the darkness he carried. But the cultists' departure suggested new complications, new questions. And at the Forsaken Lake, something waited. Something that might answer those questions in ways none of them were prepared for. Shamaz, Edrick said, I need everything we have about the Forsaken Lake. Every text, every map, every legend, Alluria, gather what you can about cultist movements in that region. Rose, I'll ready the horses, she said immediately. And select 20 of our best. We leave at first light. We leave in 2 hours, Edrick corrected. Whatever's happening at the lake, we need to be there before the cultists do whatever they're planning. As his companions dispersed to their tasks, Edrick remained at the window, watching the empty courtyard. The 8th lesson had given him coexistence, had transformed constant warfare into something more sustainable. But it had also created new questions, new uncertainties. Inside his chest, the green light pulsed steadily, and in his mind, the Devourer waited with ancient patience, curious now about what they would find at the place where its imprisonment had begun. The 8th lesson was learned. But the true test of their negotiated coexistence was about to begin.
Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures. Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures.